Hey, good afternoon, ladies. I had to make a video because I have been having so many life lessons being thrown at me, one after another, that it's not even funny. And I really was recognizing this morning as I was reflecting and just decompressing from it all, how many things I'm learning and that I could share with each of you, because it's so important, everything that I'm learning. And it ties back to the good old core essence of feminine energy. So I want to give you a little update on the recent things that have been happening in my life, and also just recognize where I have gone wrong and how I could have shifted it to make everything flow way more easy. So I want you to see if you can actually sense where I messed up and how I could have actually approached the situation completely different. So this is a really good teaching moment, and it's also an opportunity for me to share that I'm not perfect all the time either. You know, I really pride myself in standing in a presence of feminine energy as much of my life as I can, and being in flow and really standing in that presence of trusting the universe, trusting everything's going to work out for me. But even I can have slip-ups, and I can get pulled back into that hustle mode and that wanting to control the outcome mode, and it can have really bad consequences. So yeah, about a week ago, everything was said. We've been traveling, like I said, for the last 18 months almost now, my fiance and I. And every few months we plan out kind of the next itinerary of where we're going to go and what we're going to do. So we had all of our planes booked, all of our Airbnbs set out for the next 3 months. We were going to be in Montreal, and then Toronto, and then over to New York, and then over to Brooklyn. And everything was set. And a week before we're about to go to Toronto, we're in Montreal, we find out that we're not able to have our accommodations in Airbnb anymore. They shut the reservation down, and we don't have anywhere to live for the next 2 months. So most people in this case scenario go into freak out mode, right? Oh my God, I don't have anywhere to live. What am I gonna do? Panic, 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 panic. But I didn't. I was really proud of myself. I said, you know what? This is an opportunity. I said to Spence, as we're eating poutine and drinking beers, I'm like, this is an opportunity for us to find out an even better opportunity to come our way. Maybe there's been something that we didn't even realize was waiting for us until this happened. So that's the first teaching moment, is recognizing that when things don't go your way in the beginning, or you had plans and they didn't follow through in the way that you wanted, really reframing the circumstance instead of being something that's wrong or that's messed up, to how could this be an opportunity for me to actually grow or learn or have something even better show up in my life. And when it comes to relationships specifically, oh my gosh, this is such a pointed, specific thing that I see happen and that I've experienced too. You know, when we as women get so attached to one guy, and we get so attached to an idea of how we think this relationship is going to pan out and flow, and you know, we're gonna meet each other's parents, and we're gonna go on a trip, and then we're gonna get married, and we're gonna live happily forever after. When that doesn't happen, we get distraught and we get so anxious because we can't control it. So really in this moment, recognize, if he stood me up, if things didn't flow how I wanted them to flow, how can this actually be an opportunity? And how can this actually benefit me instead of feeling the hurt in the moment? So in this moment, we're like, okay, we've got a new opportunity. What are we gonna do? And so we decide, we're like, you know what? As much as we wanna live in New York, and we really had our heart set on that, we had an attachment to that, we can let that go, because what we were realizing is that we love Montreal, and it's a beautiful city, and it's just, it feels like living in Europe, but still being in North America. And it's way cheaper too. I mean, New York is very, very expensive. And so we thought, okay, this is an opportunity for us to maybe explore living in Montreal instead. So we picked a spot and we fell in love with it, and it happened to be a beautiful New York style loft. So even though we're not in New York, we find a beautiful New York loft. And we apply for it, and the host never gets back to us. He makes us wait for 24 hours. And even at that time, we had been like biking by it, getting used to the whole area, finding the neighborhood spots that we'd want to go live at, and just getting a feel for it, because living somewhere for 2 months is a long time. And even after 24 hours, he never got back to us. He stood us up, just like a man. He stood us up. And he didn't ever tell us if we actually got the reservation or not. And so at this point, once again, you have two options. You can go into panic mode and say, oh God, I'm not gonna have anywhere to live, what am I gonna do? Or you go with the flow and you keep moving. And so in that moment, we got into panic mode and we didn't go with the flow and just trust things to happen. We scrambled to try and find another spot, and we tried to force a situation to happen. And we found a different spot, and it was good and it was okay, but it wasn't the place we really had fallen in love with, once again, had gotten attached to. And about 2 hours after we commit and we pay the full non-refundable deposit to this place for a month and a half, no, for 2 months, he calls us back and he says, sure, that New York loft that you wanted, you can have it. So we were just caught up in this just like push, pull, back, forth, trying to make things work, trying to fit things into a system that we wanted and a lifestyle that we were trying to like force to happen. And it just was not flowing. And I recognized in this moment, after a lot of work back and forth of pushing and asking for refunds and trying to work it out, and we ended up getting it all smoothed out. We got our flight returned refunds, we got our Airbnb refunds, we were able to get the loft after all, but it just was exhausting. It was exhausting and draining and really took a toll on my energy and the way I was able to show up in our relationship. I found myself getting frustrated and irritated and just not in that flowing, relaxed, happy, nurturing, loving place that I usually come from. So this is another beautiful teaching lesson, is that in that moment, I went into masculine mode. I went into, okay, I gotta take control of this. I've got to figure out where we're gonna live. You know, I can't leave this up to choice or leave this up to the universe. I gotta fix it myself. And by trying to fix it and force it, it added so much resistance and it did not work as flowing as it could. If we had just waited and hadn't tried to force a third option, we would have found out two hours later that we had gotten the place and it wouldn't have been a problem. And there would have been none of this back and forth with refunds and flight changes and blah, blah, blahs. But it was a really, really beautiful opportunity for me to recognize, all right, I slipped out of it. It's time to recenter and it's time to refocus. And that's exactly what I've done all day today. I had a million things that I wanted to get done today, and I just decided instead that I was going to take the day off, and I did a really nice long yoga session. I did some stretching. I really took care of my body, and I was cutting out alcohol for the last week and sugar, and just getting back to the core centers of like what I needed to replenish myself. And took a bath, laid in the sun, did some journaling, listened to some meditations. It was just the most restorative day. And now I feel so much more recalibrated and recentered to be able to get back into the flow. Because here's what happens when we don't tap into the flow first before we try and execute. That's when we get into hustler hamster mode. And that's when things just feel heavy and intense and serious. And they create a lot more friction. But when we connect into ourselves and into our flow, and we check in and ask ourselves, what inspires us today? What feels like the lightest and easiest and most fun things of all the things we have to do today? If we can follow that flow, then everything just goes a lot easier. And if we apply this to men, it's the same kind of thing. Men in relationships, when we try and force a relationship to happen, and when we try and demand that we need to have him show up in XYZ ways, we are trying to force an outcome from a specific person or from a relationship. And that's not how relationships flow. Relationships are a dance of energy. And with that dance of energy means that it has to flow, right? It has to be able to dance. Like, I have to kind of do this because that's what dancing is. It's a flow and it's an exchange of energy. But if one person is stagnant and tight and trying to like make things happen, you can't dance within that. And you can't create a healthy dynamic within the relationship. You know what happens? It goes like this, and you butt heads. Have you ever noticed that? Have you ever experienced that, where you butt heads? Yes. This is what this entire last week has felt like for me. It's like butting heads with life, butting heads with just everything that was coming my way because I was not in flow. But as soon as I got back into it, everything was fine. I called the airlines this morning and they were happy to refund me, no problem. No challenging people to talk to. Everyone was so nice. And yeah, that's really what it's all about. So if this is something that you are curious to learn more about, send me a message, send me an email, and let's chat more about this, because this is just something I could talk on and on about all day. But I wanted to give you this update, and I wanted to share my life learnings as I go through this beautiful journey of life as well, because it's all relatable and it's all intertwined. Hope you're having a great day. Sending you love.